We spend a massive portion of our lives worshiping shadows, you know? Like we just stare at these glowing screens and we're projecting entire inner worlds, um, complex motivations and deep moral frameworks onto, well, just arrangements of pixels.
Yeah, it's all just manufactured avatars.
Right. We treat these digital avatars with more like psychological reverence than the person sitting right next to us on the bus.
Which is pretty terrifying when you think about it.
It really is. But what happens when that fragile wall between our high-minded philosophical ideals and our, garbage tier internet consumption just completely collapses?
Well, I mean, you get a crisis of meaning. You get a situation where the rigid, unforgiving structures of classical academia are violently forced to process the absolute absurdity of modern pop culture.
Yeah, like the brain just can't handle it.
Exactly. The brain simply cannot hold both realities at the same time without fracturing.
And today's deep dive is an exploration of that exact fracture. Welcome to the deep dive, by the way. Our mission for this session is to dissect a singular, utterly bizarre artifact of modern digital academic culture.
It really is a study in profound cognitive dissonance.
It is. So the stack of sources for today's deep dive, tailored for you, the listener, is incredibly brief. Like ridiculously brief.
Just a handful of words.
Right. It consists of a single tweet posted by a user named Phil Jameson, and the tweet reads simply, quote, "I never should have gone back to school."
And we really need to emphasize the formatting there.
Yeah, we will get to that. But attached to this digital lament is a photograph of a printed page. It's a transcription of his February 18, 2022 Philosophy 101 midterm essay.
The title alone is just incredible.
But the title of the paper is, quote, "Mario, the idea versus Mario, the man."
It is a remarkable artifact. I mean,
Yeah.
on the surface, it's just a tired student making a joke.
Right, just internet humor.
But if you actually subject this brief text to a rigorous line-by-line analysis, which, we're going to do today, it reveals itself as a densely packed microcosm of existential dread.
Wow. Yeah.
A breakdown of the academic ego, and eventually a surprisingly coherent, razor-sharp socioeconomic critique.
Okay, let's unpack this because we have to start with the framing. The physical context of this text dictates how we read every single word that follows.
The context is absolutely everything here.
Yeah, so the tweet itself, quote, "I never should have gone back to school." There is no capitalization. There is no punctuation.
Not at all.
It is just a raw string of text expelled into the void.
And, the typography of that tweet is a crucial framing device. In the context of digital linguistics, stripping away capitalization and punctuation.
Especially when you're in college, right?
Exactly, especially when the author is actively enrolled in higher education and ostensibly knows how to format a sentence. It's an intentional signal.
Like giving up.
It indicates linguistic surrender. It's the visual equivalent of a heavy sigh.
Oh, I love that description.
The author is communicating a level of exhaustion so profound that even holding down the shift key has become an insurmountable burden.
It's the 3 a.m. panic. You know that moment where you're staring at a blinking cursor? The caffeine has totally turned against you and you realize you have fundamentally mismanaged your life choices.
Precisely. And that framing explains the underlying despair of the entire essay. We know this is a non-traditional student, right?
Because the tweet says he went back to school.
Right. He went back. He is re-entering the crushing high-stakes environment of academia. And he is facing a Philosophy 101 midterm.
Which is terrifying.
It is. This isn't a casual participation grade. Midterms dictate your academic survival. So you have this immense pressure cooker, and when the student's mind breaks under that pressure, it defaults to what is familiar.
Which in this case is Super Mario.
Exactly. But the rules of the institution demand that he dress this pop cultural comfort blanket in the heavy velvet robes of the academy.
Which gives us this magnificent title. I mean, Mario, the idea versus Mario, the man. It is a masterpiece of overpromising.
It really is. The title instantly establishes a classic philosophical dualism.
Right.
It promises a rigorous investigation into the separation between a subject's public persona, the idea, and their inner subjective reality, the man.
Let me stop you there, because when we talk about dualism, my mind immediately goes to Plato.
Oh, naturally.
We're talking about the allegory to the cave, right? The idea that what we perceive is just a shadow on the wall and the true form of the object is hidden from us.
That is the foundational bedrock of the concept, yes. In Plato's framework, the physical world we interact with is merely a flawed reflection of a higher, perfect reality.
The realm of forms.
Exactly, the realm of forms. But over the centuries, philosophers adapted that external dualism into an internal one. We started applying it to human identity.
Like how we view modern celebrities. For you listening, think about how you interact with the idea of a massive pop star.
The brand, the curated Instagram feed.
Right, the stage persona. But we are entirely locked out from the man or the woman, the actual human being who gets indigestion or feels insecure or argues with their family.
Yes, we idolize the construct and remain willfully ignorant of the reality.
This is true.
But the friction here, the comedic and philosophical friction, is that the author is applying this heavy, deeply human duality to a collection of digital pixels.
And this is where I really have to push back on the author's intent. By mapping Plato's forms onto a fictional plumber whose entire reason for existing is to jump on things, is the student just openly mocking the assignment?
Well, it's definitely a possibility.
Because it feels like an aggressive middle finger to the professor, suggesting that the very concept of philosophical inquiry is so hollow that it can be applied to a cartoon.
It's undoubtedly a parody, but parody is often a Trojan horse for truth.
Oh, that's a good point.
The author might be trying to mock the assignment, but in doing so, they stumble backward into a very real psychological phenomenon.
We do treat these fictional constructs as if they possess an inner life.
We really do. Look at the modern internet. People write millions of words of fan fiction. They engage in bitter, real-world arguments over the moral alignments of comic book characters. We project humanity onto the void.
That is a terrifying thought when you apply it to how we consume information. If we are so eager to project a complex inner life onto Mario, how much of our understanding of actual historical figures or politicians is just us interacting with an idea we've constructed?
A very unsettling amount, probably.
Right. We accept the shadow on the wall because analyzing the object casting the shadow requires too much work.
And that brings us to the core epistemological crisis of the essay. The student realizes that the idea of Mario is universally accepted, but the man is a black box.
Which leads to the opening line of the midterm. And I love this line, quote, "Everyone knows Mario is cool as fuck."
An incredible sentence to submit for academic credit.
I mean, it is the boldest possible way to start a midterm. I'm just picturing a weary professor surrounded by stacks of papers citing Socrates, and they hit cool as fuck.
It's quite the shock.
But aside from the shock value, does this actually serve a structural purpose in the essay?
Surprisingly, it does. In formal logic and philosophical proofs, you must establish an axiom.
Okay, an axiom.
Right. A starting point that requires no further proof because it is self-evident. You cannot build a complex argument without a foundation of shared reality.
So they have to establish gym and ground.
Exactly. The student assumes absolute consensus on Mario's coolness. It is treated as an objective, a priori truth of the universe.
They treat it like a law of physics. Gravity exists, the sky is blue, Mario is cool.
Exactly. But the rhetorical brilliance is why they establish that absolute certainty.
Why?
They establish it so they can immediately pivot and stare into the terrifying void of uncertainty that surrounds it. The essay continues.
Oh, right, quote. But who knows what he's thinking? Who knows why he crushes turtles?
And suddenly, the bright, primary colored world of the video game becomes deeply sinister.
It really does. When you actually strip away the catchy 8-bit soundtrack and just look at the raw data of the behavior, it is an absurd visual.
A horrifying one, really.
Yeah. This universally beloved icon spends his days relentlessly curb-stomping local wildlife.
And this represents a hard shift into epistemology, the branch of philosophy concerned with the nature and limits of human knowledge. The student is hitting the wall of what philosophers call the problem of other minds.
Okay, explain that for me. Because to the average person, if someone is crushing turtles, you don't need a philosophy degree to know they have a problem.
Well, in our daily lives, we infer the mental states of others based on their behavior. If someone is crying, we assume they are sad.
Right, basic empathy.
But epistemology demands a higher burden of proof. René Descartes famously argued that the only thing you can be absolutely certain of is your own consciousness.
I think, therefore I am.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Everything outside of your own mind, including the minds of others, is fundamentally unobservable. You can observe the action of Mario crushing the turtles.
You can measure the velocity of his jump.
You can, but the motivation, the why, remains an impenetrable void.
So, for all we know, he could be experiencing profound, weeping regret with every turtle he flattens. Or he could be a complete sociopath, feeling nothing but the cold thrill of domination.
We simply cannot know. We are trapped in the realm of observation, locked out of his inner reality.
Wow.
And the student's intense frustration with this epistemological limit leads to what is arguably the most surreal and baffling comparison in the entire document.
Yes. This is the moment where the essay completely derailed my brain. The author asks why we think of Mario as fondly as we think of, quote, the mythical, non-existent Dr. Pepper.
It is a profound rupture in the text.
I really need you to justify this for me because my initial reaction was that the student is just sleep-deprived and spouting nonsense.
It's a very fair reaction.
Right. Dr. Pepper does exist. It is a very tangible, highly carbonated beverage sitting on grocery store shelves across the planet. Why is the author calling it mythical and questioning its existence in parentheses? Is this just a bad joke?
It reads like a bad joke, but if we analyze the mechanics of the comparison, it lands squarely in the territory of postmodern philosophy.
Okay, I'm listening.
Specifically, we need to look at Jean Baudrillard's theory of the hyperreal and simulacra.
Okay, walk me through Baudrillard. How does French postmodernism apply to a soda?
Baudrillard argued that in contemporary society, our reality has been replaced by symbols and signs. A simulacrum is a copy of a thing that either no longer has an original or never had an original to begin with.
Okay.
Think about Dr. Pepper. What flavor is it?
It's, well, they say it's 23 flavors. It's not cherry. It's not cola. It's just Dr. Pepper.
Exactly. Apple juice refers to an apple. Orange juice refers to an orange. But Dr. Pepper refers to absolutely nothing in the natural world.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
It is a completely fabricated synthetic profile.
Mm.
Yet millions of people have a nostalgic emotional attachment to it. We crave a reality that does not actually exist in nature. It is a simulacrum.
Oh, wow. So the student is suggesting that the idea of Dr. Pepper, this idealized, culturally manufactured flavor, is as intangible and artificially constructed as the idea of Mario's heroism.
Yes. You can physically drink the liquid, just as you can physically press the buttons on the controller. But the myth of Dr. Pepper, the cultural fondness, the branding, the identity we associate with it, is a corporate hallucination.
That is mind-blowing.
By questioning the existence of Dr. Pepper, the author is signaling a total breakdown of objective truth. The academic pressure has fractured their grip on reality.
They're losing it.
They are. They are looking at the world and realizing that the things we love most, our heroes, our comfort foods, are just synthetic codes designed for mass consumption.
It is like staring too deeply at the Matrix, but instead of green code, it's just high-fructose corn syrup and digital sprites.
Beautifully put.
And right after delivering this mind-bending, beverage-based existentialism, the author punctuates the thought with a single word, a complete sentence consisting of one word, perchance.
The infamous perchance.
I laughed out loud when I read this because it sounds exactly like a student who just wrote a paragraph about soda in a Philosophy 101 midterm, realized they are plummeting toward a failing grade, and frantically deployed the most academic-sounding word they could think of to salvage it.
It's a very transparent move.
Except you can't just use perchance as a standalone sentence. It's an adverb meaning perhaps. It's not a mic drop.
It is grammatically catastrophic.
What?
But functionally, it is brilliant.
How so?
Perchance becomes a recurring motif in the text. In music theory, a motif is a short musical idea that grounds a piece. Here, it grounds the absurdity.
It grounds it by making fun of it.
By distilling the very nature of academic writing. Philosophers are notoriously non-committal.
That's true.
If you read academic journals, they're filled with hedging. Scholars rarely make absolute declarations. Instead, they say one might consider, or could be argued, or perhaps...
Always leaving a note.
Exactly. They build an elaborate theory and then give themselves an escape hatch. The student has taken that entire tradition of intellectual cowardice and compressed it into a single, misused word.
It's the linguistic equivalent of throwing a smoke bomb. Is Dr. Pepper a non-existent simulacrum? Perchance, I will take no further questions.
Exactly. And the student desperately needs that smoke bomb to cover their tracks, because the next paragraph attempts the most wildly ambitious intellectual leap of the entire essay.
Oh, this is my favorite part.
The student brings Immanuel Kant into the mushroom kingdom.
I leaned forward when I hit this part of the source material. We go from internet slang and soda conspiracies straight into 18th century Enlightenment thought.
It's a jarring transition.
The author writes, quote, I believe it was Kant who said, experience without theory is blind, but theory without experience is mere intellectual play.
We have to evaluate the student's scholarship here. They are heavily paraphrasing Immanuel Kant's monumental work, The Critique of Pure Reason.
How badly did they mangle the quote?
The actual translation is generally accepted as, thoughts without content are empty. Intuitions without concepts are blind.
Okay, so a bit off.
But the student's paraphrase is conceptually accurate. Kant was attempting to resolve a massive philosophical civil war between two camps, the empiricists and the rationalists.
Break those down for me just so we're all on the same page.
Empiricists believe that all human knowledge comes from sensory experience. You know fire is hot because you feel the heat. You are a blank slate gathering data.
Got it. And the rationalists?
Rationalists, on the other hand, believe that human reason and intellect are the primary source of knowledge, independent of sensory experience. You can deduce mathematical truths without needing to physically touch a number.
So Kant steps in to broker a peace treaty.
He argues that both are necessary, but neither is sufficient on its own. You need the raw, chaotic data of sensory experience, what the student calls experience, but you also need the internal organizing framework of a mind to process that data.
What the student calls theory.
Yes. If you only have experience, you are just blindly stumbling through sensory input without understanding it. If you only have theory, you are just playing imaginary games in your head with no connection to the real world.
Okay, I actually understand Kant now better than I did in college. The student clearly paid attention to at least one lecture.
They absorb something, yes.
But this is where the essay goes completely off the rails, because we have to look at how the student maps this profound 18th century framework onto a video game.
It's quite the reach.
The student writes, quote, Mario exhibits experience by crushing Turts all day, but he exhibits theory by stating, let's-a go.
It is a breathtaking collapse of logical reasoning.
I mean, I am trying to be generous to the source text here, but I have to call out the absurdity. Is the author genuinely trying to argue that shouting let's-a go constitutes a complex theoretical framework?
It seems that way.
This is a character whose entire spoken vocabulary is essentially 5 catchphrases. It feels like the student is just violently hammering a square peg into a round hole because they need to hit a word count.
Right. You are absolutely right to challenge it. The connection is incredibly tenuous. It is the desperate act of a student trying to forcibly merge their flashcards with their weekend activities.
Yeah, that makes sense.
But let's play devil's advocate and take the student's argument seriously for a moment. Let's analyze the Kantian Mario.
All right, let's dive into the madness. How does let's-a go function as a rationalist framework?
According to the student's map, the crushing of Turts is the raw empiricist data. It is pure, unfiltered sensory input.
He's just out there feeling the crunch.
Exactly. Mario is physically interacting with the world, jumping, falling, impacting shells. But if that was all he did, Kant would say he is blind.
Right.
A man silently, randomly stomping on wildlife without an organizing principle is just a chaotic force of nature. He lacks agency.
He'd just be a menace, a hazard to the local ecosystem.
But then Mario speaks. He declares, let's-a go.
His theory.
Within the context of the essay, this simple catchphrase acts as the a priori structure of his mind. It is a declaration of forward momentum.
Oh, I see.
It imbues the mindless violence with direction, with purpose, with a theoretical mandate. He isn't just reacting to the world. He has theorized his trajectory through it.
The experience of crushing is no longer blind. It is guided by the theory of going.
Precisely.
That actually makes a twisted kind of sense. He declares his intent, and then his physical experiences are organized around achieving that intent.
It's logically consistent internally.
But even if we grant the student this massive philosophical stretch, the actual execution on the page is just a disaster. The tonal whiplash is enough to give you a concussion.
The language devolves completely.
We go from, I believe it was Kant who said, which is the most throat-clearing, pretentious way to start a sentence, to the phrase, crushing Turts all day.
The word turts is a vital psychological clue.
It's a degradation of language. Even turtles feels a bit silly in an academic paper, but Turts.
It's horrific.
That is internet slang. It is the language of a Twitch chat, not a university midterm.
It represents the erosion of the academic ego. Writing a formal essay requires immense discipline. You must maintain an objective, authoritative distance from the subject matter.
Which is hard to do at 3 a.m.
Very hard. Exhaustion strips away that discipline. The student's professional boundaries have dissolved, and the ultimate proof of that dissolution comes at the end of the paragraph.
Right after establishing Mario as a Kantian paragon, the student literally cheers for him on the page. Keep it up, baby!
The analyst has become the fan.
It is so deeply human. You can feel the students' desperation. They aren't trying to impress the professor anymore. They're just seeking comfort in the familiar.
They're projecting their own needs onto Mario.
Yeah, they want Mario to succeed because if Mario can keep it up, maybe the student can keep it up and finish this agonizing exam. It's a complete abandonment of scholarly distance.
And historically, when an essay's tone collapses this violently, the rest of the text is usually just rambling filler.
Just word salad.
But this essay does the exact opposite. After cheering like a spectator at a sports bar, the author pivots and delivers a massive, intellectually rigorous left turn.
This is when we leave the relatively abstract world of epistemology and Kant, and we slam face first into the dark, unforgiving reality of socioeconomics.
The final section of this brief essay transcends the parody and manages to deliver a genuinely biting critique of modern society.
It starts by examining the illusion of risk. The student writes, "When Mario leaves his place of safety to stomp a turdy, he knows that he may die." And I want to emphasize that the author capitalizes the D in die.
The sudden capitalization is not an accident.
No.
By capitalizing death, the author elevates it from a mere game mechanic, a reset button, to an absolute existential finality. Up until this point, we've been discussing abstract knowledge and theory. Now, the stakes are absolute.
It creates this incredibly compelling narrative of heroism. Mario is leaving safety. He's engaging his Kantian theory of let's go in the real dangerous world. He is risking his one finite existence.
He fits the classical archetype of the tragic hero, putting his life on the line for a greater cause.
Right.
But the student constructs this heroic illusion purely so they can shatter it with a devastating economic reality.
Let me read the core argument here, because this is where the essay shifts from a funny internet joke to legitimately heavy social commentary.
This is the crux of it.
And yet, for a man who can purchase lives with money, a life becomes a mere store of value.
This is a breathtaking pivot into Marxist socioeconomic critique. The student is suddenly interrogating the fundamental mechanics of the Mario universe through the lens of capital accumulation.
For the uninitiated, though I assume most of you listening know this, the core mechanic of almost every Mario game since the 1980s is that if you collect 100 gold coins, you are rewarded with an extra life, a one-up.
It's ingrained in our culture.
We have known this since we were children, but I have never, in my decades of playing these games, stopped to consider the horrifying philosophical implications of that mechanic.
Because if survival can be purchased, if mortality can be staved off simply by hoarding enough capital, then the initial premise of the essay, that Mario is a hero taking a risk, is completely fraudulent.
It's a lie.
If you can buy your way out of death with a capital D, you are not risking anything.
Life loses its sanctity. It is stripped of its intrinsic sacred value and becomes, as the author states, a mere store of value.
It becomes a fungible asset, a commodity. Mario is no longer a hero braving the existential unknown. He is an aggressive investor managing a portfolio of existence.
Oh my God.
He doesn't fear death. He only fears a negative balance sheet.
That is so bleak. And the student cements this concept with an incredibly sharp real-world analogy. They write, quote, "A tax that can be paid for, much as a rich man feels any law with a fine, is a price."
This analogy is the intellectual crown jewel of the essay.
I want to spend some time on this because it is intensely applicable to our current society. Think about how the legal system functions for different socioeconomic classes.
It's a two-tiered system.
If you are a working-class person living paycheck to paycheck, a $200 parking ticket is a catastrophic event. It acts as a massive deterrent.
It could ruin your month.
It means you might have to skip meals, or you might be short on rent, which leads to eviction. The law functions as a strict moral and physical boundary because the penalty threatens your survival.
The fine is designed to enforce behavioral compliance through the threat of financial ruin.
But if you are a multimillionaire or a billionaire, a $200 parking ticket doesn't deter your behavior at all. It is not a punishment.
Not in the slightest.
It is just the cost of premium parking. You want to leave your luxury car in front of the restaurant. You just pay the $200 VIP fee to the city. The law ceases to be a boundary and simply transforms into a menu of prices for bad behavior.
We see this on a corporate level constantly.
Yeah.
Massive corporations will intentionally violate environmental regulations or labor laws because they have calculated that the profit generated by the violation vastly outweighs the eventual fines imposed by the government.
It's just a business expense.
The fine is not a deterrent. It is merely a transaction fee factored into the quarterly budget.
And the student takes this real-world economic reality and applies it to Mario. We watch this character fall into lava, get incinerated by fireballs, or get crushed by falling blocks. As players, we treat it as a failure.
We feel bad for a second.
But within the philosophical framework the student has built, these deaths aren't tragedies. They're just the transaction fees Mario pays to continue his violent rampage across the landscape.
That's chilling.
His immense hoarded wealth, the thousands of gold coins he collects, insulates him entirely from the consequences of his actions.
The analogy completely rewrites the mythology of the character. The cultural propaganda we have been fed for decades is that Mario is an everyman.
He's a plumber.
He is a working-class plumber, wearing blue-collar overalls, rising up to fight a monstrous monarchy. But the reality of his material conditions reveals something far more sinister. He operates entirely outside the rules of mortality that govern the lower classes.
And who are the lower classes in this scenario?
The student delivers the final verdict. Quote, "We think of Mario as a hero, but he is simply a 1%er of a more privileged variety. The life kind."
The life kind. That phrase genuinely gave me pause. It sounds like the premise of a dystopian sci-fi novel.
It implies a horrific caste system. The student has coined a neologism to describe the ultimate unbridgeable privilege.
The ultimate divide.
In our reality, the 1% hoard wealth, land, and resources. But in the Mushroom Kingdom, the 1% hoard existence itself. The ultimate luxury isn't a yacht, it's immortality.
Which means we have to look at the turdies. That's the student's further degraded word for the turtles.
The poor turdies.
The turdies don't have this privilege. When a turtle gets stumped, it is over. They don't have bank accounts overflowing with gold coins to buy a second chance. They have one fragile, finite life.
They are the ultimate precarious working class. They are bound by the absolute finality of death, with a capital D.
So Mario, this immortal billionaire oligarch who is artificially disguised as a cheerful tradesman, just bounces across their shelves.
It's quite the image.
He treats their permanent, agonizing deaths as nothing more than a convenient stepping stone for his own theoretically justified momentum. He isn't a hero.
No.
He is a walking, jumping engine of unchecked capitalism, destroying the vulnerable without any fear of repercussion.
He's a predator whose wealth has rendered him untouchable.
And then, having delivered this devastating Marxist takedown of the world's most recognizable pop culture icon, the student just stops. They end the entire essay with one final word.
Perchance.
Just perchance.
It is magnificent.
It's not even a conclusion. It is a weary sigh, a verbal shrug.
Yeah.
It's as if the student wrote this incredibly dark, socially aware critique, suddenly realized the sheer madness of submitting this for a Philosophy 101 midterm, looked at the clock, saw they had 2 minutes left, and just gave up.
The final perchance brings us full circle, right back to the tweet that started it all. I never should have gone back to school.
The lament.
The weight of the analysis broke the analyst. The academic structure demanded a profound observation, and the student accidentally dug so deep they found a truth too dark to process.
Yeah.
They realized that the heroes of their childhood are just immortal oligarchs, and their own pursuit of education is just an attempt to hoard enough coins to survive. The perchance is the sound of a mind shutting down to protect itself.
So what does this all mean? We started this deep dive looking at a viral tweet and a piece of paper that honestly looks like it was found crumpled at the bottom of a recycling bin in a university library.
A true artifact.
We saw a non-traditional student's bone-weary regret over returning to the high-pressure environment of higher education. But out of that regret, out of that sleep-deprived panic, birthed something truly remarkable.
It really did.
A bizarre, hilarious, yet surprisingly profound critique of how we project humanity onto hollow ideas, how we justify our actions, and the horrifying reality of how wealth insulates the powerful from the consequences of their actions. All built on the back of a pixelated plumber who crushes turts.
For you, the listener, there is immense value in dissecting texts like this. It demonstrates a fundamental truth about human intellect. We often gatekeep philosophy.
We do. We make it seem inaccessible.
We act as if critical thinking and complex analytical frameworks are fragile things that must only be kept in museums, applied only to serious literature or historical treaties. But they are not fragile. They are tools.
And you can use them on anything.
And those tools can be applied to literally anything in your environment. Furthermore, it shows that humor, even the desperate, broken, grammatically incorrect humor of an exhausted student, is often the most effective vehicle for exploring existential truths.
That's incredibly well said.
We can laugh at the absurdity of Mario, the idea versus Mario the man, while still acknowledging the terrifying validity of the life kind.
It really does. It takes the muddy, panic waters of a terrible midterm and manages to dredge up a pearl of genuine wisdom at the bottom. And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with a final thought to mull over. Something that builds on the student's revelation about Mario's ability to buy extra lives.
Okay.
We look at Mario and we realize that his infinite safety net, his ability to purchase his way out of danger, is exactly what negates his heroism.
Right, because there's no risk.
True heroism, by definition, requires the presence of real unavoidable risk. It requires the possibility of permanent loss. So how does that reframe our own society's relentless, all-consuming pursuit of wealth and security?
Wow.
We spend our entire lives trying to build financial safety nets. We try to buy our way out of risk. We build gated communities. We buy massive insurance policies. We try to insulate ourselves from every conceivable danger.
They're all chasing coins.
Does our quest to eliminate risk from our own lives ultimately strip us of our chance to be everyday heroes? If we succeed in insulating ourselves from the struggles of the world, do we lose our connection to the reality of the Turties?
That is a haunting question.
Are we all just desperately trying to hoard enough coins to avoid the consequences of living? Perchance.